He wasn't born in a palace, but he died a king. The image is immortal. A black pompadour slicked back to perfection, a voice that could melt hearts or shake stadiums, and hips that defied a nation's sense of decency. But what if behind that electrifying smile, behind the rhinestone jumpsuits and velvet curtains of Graceland, Elvis Presley's life was a masterclass in secrets and shadows? They called him the king of rock and roll, but the truth is, Elvis was a haunted man, hounded by fame, surrounded by loyalty and betrayal, and all the while, caught in a whirlwind of obsessions, forbidden love, and a darkness that fame could never cure. He wasn't just a star. He was a scandal magnet. This isn't the Elvis you see in framed portraits or on postage stamps. This is the Elvis his entourage tried to shield from the cameras. The Elvis his manager tried to silence. The Elvis whose own family still grapples with the legacy he left behind. Some secrets are salacious, some are sad, but all of them are real. These are the top 10 scandalous secrets Elvis Presley left behind. And number 1 might just change the way you remember the king forever. Number 10. The hip shake that shook America. It started with a song and a snarl. June 5th, 1956. Elvis Presley steps onto the stage of the Milton Berle show. He's wearing a boxy plaid jacket, microphone in hand, eyes gleaming with a mischief that even he couldn't predict would ignite a cultural firestorm. The band starts. The crowd cheers. And then Elvis breaks into Hound Dog. But halfway through the number, something changes. The music slows. The band holds back. And Elvis, instead of moving to the beat, begins grinding. Slow, deliberate, and loaded with suggestiveness. His knees tremble, his hips thrust, his lip curls in that now iconic sneer, and in the silence that follows the final note, television history is made, and America loses its collective mind. The backlash is immediate. From pulpits to PTA meetings, cries of indecency and juvenile corruption ring across the country. One Catholic publication condemns him as a sexual exhibitionist. Others go further, calling his performance a threat to national morality. Newspapers label him vulgar. Censors step in. By the time Elvis appears next on The Ed Sullivan Show, the cameras famously film him only from the waist up. What the world didn't know was that this wasn't an accident or a misstep. Elvis wanted to provoke. He was hungry for fame, but he was also furious at the constraints of polite society. That night, on Milton Berle, he declared war on repression, and the consequences would follow him for the rest of his life. Privately, he was shaken. As bold as his performance had been, Elvis still craved approval from the public, from his mother, and from the Southern Baptist morality that always clung to his conscience. After the Burley backlash, he reportedly confessed to friends that he never meant to upset anybody, but the damage and the transformation was done. That single performance turned Elvis from a rising star into a cultural lightning rod. It also sealed his fate. He would never again be just a singer. He was now a symbol of sex, rebellion, and controversy, whether he liked it or not, and he would carry that burden to his final days. Number 9. The white underwear fetish and bedroom myths. Behind the closed doors of Graceland, amid the peacocks, mirrored ceilings, and the omnipresent scent of cologne, lived a man whose public persona was all heat and seduction, but whose private habits painted a very different picture. The mythos around Elvis Presley's sexuality was larger than life. Women fainted at his concerts. Rumors of conquests followed him from town to town, but those close to the king whispered of a reality far stranger and more unsettling than the fantasy. He had a white underwear fetish. Not just any underwear, specifically white cotton briefs. It wasn't about fashion. It wasn't even entirely about comfort. According to insiders, Elvis had a near-obsessive attachment to wearing fresh, pristine pairs daily. His staff was instructed to ensure they were always available. If they weren't, there was hell to pay. Some said he believed white symbolized purity, control, his last vestige of cleanliness in an otherwise chaotic life. Then came the stories from behind the velvet ropes of the bedroom. Several lovers, some named, some still anonymous, have echoed a similar tale, that the king, despite his sensual stage persona, often avoided sexual intercourse altogether. He preferred to remain in control, to maintain emotional and physical distance. Some said he was deeply uncomfortable with intimacy. Others suggested that he idealized women to the point that any overt act of passion felt like a betrayal of that purity. Priscilla Presley herself once reflected on how their relationship shifted after marriage. Elvis, she said, was intensely romantic, but not in the ways the world assumed. Their sexual relationship reportedly cooled once she became his wife. It was as if, once he placed a woman on a pedestal, as he had his mother, as he did Priscilla, he could no longer touch her in that way. These contradictions created a psychic war within Elvis. He was the king of desire, but feared real closeness. He sold sex to the world, but sought innocence in private. He loved women deeply, perhaps too deeply, yet could not always connect in the way they craved. And so the white underwear remained, unblemished, untouched, folded like armor, a strange, silent emblem of a man who could seduce the world but couldn't always touch it. Number 8. Pre-marriage teen romance with Priscilla. She was 14, he was 24. It sounds like fiction, an urban legend passed through gossip chains and hushed late-night interviews. But the truth is well documented and more uncomfortable than many fans would like to admit. In 1959, while stationed in Germany during his military service, Elvis Presley was introduced to Priscilla Beaulieu at a party. She was stunning, poised beyond her years, and barely a teenager. He was already a global icon, drowning in letters from adoring women, yet instantly drawn to the quiet girl in the corner. That night, he reportedly told a friend, "She's young enough I can train her any way I want." From the very beginning, their relationship teetered on the edge of propriety. Elvis courted Priscilla with slow deliberation, lavish gifts, emotional attention, and long, late-night conversations about everything from music to God to loneliness. But while some around them saw it as innocent courtship, others quietly worried about the power imbalance. Her parents were initially resistant, but Elvis was persuasive. He assured them of his intentions, swore to protect Priscilla's virtue, and eventually won their reluctant blessing. What followed was a long-distance relationship filled with letters and carefully supervised visits, until, in 1963, Priscilla was invited to move into Graceland. She was 17. Officially, she lived with Elvis's parents and attended school. Unofficially, she was being groomed to become the king's queen. By the time they married in 1967, she was 21 and Elvis was 32. To the public, it was a fairy tale, but behind the scenes, Priscilla's transformation was methodical. Elvis controlled her wardrobe. He suggested she dye her hair black. He dictated her makeup. He wanted her to reflect the image of his idealized woman, an echo of his mother's beauty, a figure of porcelain innocence. And yet, the relationship that had once been obsessive began to dissolve after the wedding. Elvis lost interest sexually. Priscilla later revealed she often felt like a doll, something to be admired, not loved. She eventually sought affection elsewhere, leading to the slow, aching collapse of their marriage. Today, the romance is remembered with nostalgia, but it remains one of the most controversial chapters in Elvis's legacy, a reminder that even legends have shadows, and that love, when mixed with power, can blur the lines between devotion and control. Number 7. Hollywood affairs and secret lovers. Graceland was his castle, but Hollywood was his playground. As Elvis Presley's fame rocketed from Memphis stages to international stardom, so too did his access to the most glamorous women in the world. Behind the tightly controlled public image of a devoted husband and wholesome Southern boy, Elvis was entangled in a web of secret romances, emotional entanglements, and fleeting yet powerful liaisons with some of the most famous women of his era. At the center of it all was Anne Margaret, the Swedish-American bombshell starred alongside Elvis in Viva Las Vegas in 1964, and their on-screen chemistry sizzled. But off-screen, it exploded. They bonded over their shared love of music, performance, and motorcycles. To those who witnessed it, their connection was undeniable, almost gravitational. Elvis, in fact, reportedly told confidants that he had met his female counterpart. For a moment, there was talk of marriage, Priscilla, still Elvis's girlfriend at the time and living at Graceland, sensed the threat. Anne Margaret would later describe Elvis as her soulmate, but the romance ended as abruptly as it began. Under pressure from Colonel Tom Parker, who saw the relationship as a PR liability. Parker believed Elvis needed to project the image of a single heartthrob to maintain his marketability, and so the affair was buried, but not forgotten. Anne Margaret was one of the few stars who attended Elvis's funeral. She mourned him not just as a friend, but as something much more intimate. Then came Natalie Wood, another Hollywood beauty swept up in the Elvis vortex. Their fling was brief, torrid, and, by many accounts, emotionally volatile. Natalie's mother reportedly disapproved of Elvis and cut the relationship short, but not before rumors of wild nights and broken hearts swirled through studio backlots. Other names whispered through the years included Connie Stevens, Sybil Shepherd, and even Marilyn Monroe. Some of these connections remain rumor. Others, quietly confirmed by insiders, were flashes of passion that Elvis never fully acknowledged. The tragedy, perhaps, is not in the volume of affairs, but in the emotional vacuum they filled. Elvis was adored by millions, yet deeply lonely. He sought companionship, affirmation, escape, but like many icons, he struggled to find a love that could survive the weight of his fame. His flings were often short-lived, intense, and suffused with drama. They weren't just about lust, they were about distraction. From the ache of isolation, from the expectations of the public, and from the sinking feeling that no matter how many women he touched, none would ever truly reach the boy from Tupelo hiding behind the rhinestones. Number 6. Drug dependency and Dr. Nick overprescribing. By the mid-1970s, Elvis Presley no longer danced. He stumbled. His voice, once honeyed and defiant, began to crack. His face grew swollen. His stage performances became erratic. And though tabloids blamed stress and fatigue, those closest to him knew the truth. Elvis was drowning in a sea of pills. At the center of this pharmaceutical storm was Dr. George Nicopolis, known to the inner circle simply as Dr. Nick. A trusted physician, Dr. Nick had been brought into Elvis's life to help him manage the physical toll of relentless touring. But what began as treatment soon spiraled into dependency. Instead of refusing his patients' escalating requests, Dr. Nick enabled them, writing prescriptions like love letters, with little regard for consequence. By early 1977, just months before Elvis's death, Dr. Nick had allegedly prescribed him over 10,000 doses of pills, including opiates, barbiturates, stimulants, and tranquilizers. Pills to wake him up, pills to bring him down, pills to soothe his nerves, pills to numb his heart. Elvis wasn't just addicted. He was trapped, caged by his own reliance and by a system that kept feeding it. To the outside world, he was still the king, but behind closed doors, he was a man in physical agony. Years of relentless performing had wrecked his spine and digestive system. He suffered from insomnia, glaucoma, and severe hypertension, and yet the root of his collapse wasn't purely medical, it was emotional. Fame had made him a prisoner. The drugs were his only escape. Friends begged him to seek help. Some members of the Memphis Mafia pleaded with Dr. Nick to cut back, but Elvis, charming and imperious, brushed them off. "I know what I'm doing," he'd say. "I'm in control." He wasn't. On August 16, 1977, Elvis was found collapsed on the bathroom floor of Graceland. His body was bloated. His heart was enlarged. Toxicology reports revealed a cocktail of narcotics in his system. Officially, his death was listed as a heart attack. Unofficially, it was death by medicine, death by silence, death by access. Years later, in 1995, Dr. Nick's medical license was revoked. He maintained that he was only doing what Elvis asked, that his intention was always to protect the king. But history has judged him as both guardian and executioner. In his final years, Elvis didn't look like the man who revolutionized music. He looked like someone trying to disappear, and the pills helped him do just that. Number 5. The Memphis Mafia's role in cover-ups. They were always there, lurking in the shadows of Graceland's hallways, riding shotgun in limousines, posted up backstage with arms folded and eyes scanning. They called themselves the Memphis Mafia. Elvis's closest friends, confidants, enablers, bodyguards, and protectors. But what the world didn't know was just how much this tight-knit entourage helped hide. To outsiders, they looked like groupies with security badges, a rotating band of cousins, childhood friends, and Southern boys who followed Elvis wherever he went. But inside the Presley kingdom, they were the firewall. If Elvis collapsed from drugs, they cleaned it up. If a girlfriend became too emotional, they were the ones who quietly escorted her out the back door. If a journalist poked around too hard, the mafia knew how to politely intimidate. They weren't just staff, they were a shield, and sometimes a smokescreen. At first, their job was to make Elvis's life easier: fetch food, arrange transport, keep the hangers-on at bay. But as Elvis's dependency grew, so did their responsibilities. They became pill runners, lie fixers, and crisis managers. Some justified their actions as loyalty. Others, years later, admitted they were scared of losing access, scared of angering the king, scared of what Elvis might do if left to his own devices. And Elvis paid well for that silence. Members of the mafia lived rent-free at Graceland. They received luxury cars, extravagant gifts, and monthly salaries. Elvis showered them with Rolexes and Cadillacs. In return, they looked the other way when things got dark, very dark. But not everyone kept quiet forever. In 1977, mere weeks before Elvis's death, 3 of the Memphis Mafia's most trusted members were fired: Red West, Sonny West, and David Hebler. Hurt and broke, they responded by co-authoring a tell-all book titled Elvis, What Happened? The manuscript detailed his drug addiction, bizarre behavior, and emotional collapse. It wasn't just a betrayal, it was a bombshell. Elvis was devastated. According to insiders, he wept when he learned of the book's contents. He felt exposed, cornered, but others, including Priscilla, believed it might have saved his life had he lived long enough to confront it. Instead, Elvis, What Happened? Was published just 2 weeks before his death. It was the first time the public heard whispers of what the Memphis Mafia had helped cover up for years. After his passing, the Mafia members dispersed. Some gave interviews, some slipped into obscurity, but none could deny their role in preserving the myth while quietly nursing the man behind it as he crumbled. They were loyal, they were afraid, and they were complicit. Number 4, Colonel Tom Parker's financial manipulation and lies. If Elvis Presley was the king, then Colonel Tom Parker was the man who ruled behind the throne. To the public, Parker was the charming, cigar-chomping impresario who guided Elvis from a Mississippi boy with a guitar to the biggest star on earth. But behind that carnival barker grin was a master manipulator with secrets darker than anyone imagined. For starters, he wasn't a colonel. He wasn't even American. Born Andreas Cornelis van Kuijk in the Netherlands, Parker illegally entered the United States as a young man and never obtained citizenship. The fake title of colonel was a favor from a Louisiana governor, a gimmick to add flair. But it worked. It gave him gravitas, authority. He became the ultimate showman, a con artist in plain sight. But his greatest con was Elvis himself. Parker took an unheard-of 50% of Elvis's earnings, double the industry standard. He locked Elvis into restrictive contracts, refused to let him tour internationally, allegedly because he feared being exposed for lacking a passport, and repeatedly turned down offers that would have elevated Elvis's artistry in favor of easy cash. He pushed Elvis into film roles he loathed, corny musicals that padded Parker's wallet while flattening Elvis's spirit. By the late 60s, the king was artistically unfulfilled, creatively stifled, and privately miserable. But the money kept flowing, and Parker kept collecting. Even more sinister were the hidden debts. Parker had a serious gambling problem, often racking up millions in losses at Las Vegas casinos. He used Elvis's name, his brand, as collateral. According to insiders, many of Elvis's grueling concert residencies were arranged not for the fans, but to pay off Parker's debts. Parker controlled Elvis not just financially, but psychologically. He isolated him from business decisions, kept him dependent, and fostered a sense of childlike trust. Elvis once said, "I don't know anything about contracts, I just sing." That wasn't humility, that was conditioning. After Elvis died, the extent of Parker's manipulation came to light. He was sued by the Presley estate, which claimed he defrauded the star out of millions. The courts agreed. Parker was stripped of his control over Elvis's legacy, and yet, the damage had already been done. While Elvis sang about heartbreak hotels and blue suede shoes, Parker was building a prison around him, one where art was sacrificed for profit and the king was nothing more than an overworked pawn. He claimed to love Elvis like a son, but in the end, he sold him like a product. Number 3. Legal battles and fraud attempts, posthumously over Graceland. Even in death, Elvis Presley couldn't escape the chaos. Graceland, the mansion he cherished, the palace of rock and roll dreams, should have stood as a sanctuary of peace. Instead, it became a legal battlefield, a stage for deception, betrayal, and greed that would continue decades after his passing. In the years following Elvis's death, the Presley estate teetered on the edge of financial ruin. Lavish spending, mismanagement, and shrinking royalties had drained its reserves. That's when Priscilla Presley stepped in, transforming Graceland from a decaying relic into a profitable museum. Her foresight preserved Elvis's legacy, but it didn't shield it from vultures. In 2024, headlines exploded with a bizarre and brazen story. A woman posing as Lisa Marie Presley, Elvis's only child, attempted to fraudulently sell Graceland. Using forged documents and a series of shell companies, she claimed that Lisa Marie had defaulted on a loan and that Graceland was collateral. The scam unraveled when the real Presley estate caught wind of the attempted transaction. A federal investigation followed. Charges of mail fraud and identity theft were filed. The woman, a con artist with a history of aliases, had never met a member of the Presley family. She was simply exploiting a famous name for profit, but the wounds were deeper than one scheme. In 2025, more litigation surfaced, this time over alleged unauthorized loans and financial misrepresentation involving Graceland's management. The Presley estate, now under intense scrutiny, was forced to defend its control of the property once again. Whispers of infighting, contested wills, and aggressive corporate interests swirled. Elvis, who once ruled the home as a refuge from the madness of fame, was now the unwilling centerpiece in a tug-of-war of greed. But the haunting truth is this: Graceland had always been more than bricks and chandeliers. To Elvis, it was the only place he truly felt safe. It was where he played with Lisa Marie, where he retreated from the blinding flashbulbs, where he laughed, wept, and died. And now, years after his body was laid to rest in the garden outside, the world still claws at what he left behind. The king built an empire, but in the end, even his castle wasn't safe. Number 2. Conspiracy theories. Did Elvis fake his death? August 16th, 1977. The world stopped. News of Elvis Presley's death at the age of 42 sent shockwaves through fans, media, and music history itself. But almost as quickly as the morning began, a whisper of doubt began to spread. A whisper that would become a roar, a belief held by millions. Elvis didn't die, he disappeared. The conspiracy theories were wild, elaborate, and strangely compelling. Some claimed Elvis faked his death to escape the pressures of fame and the clutches of Colonel Parker. Others believed he entered witness protection after cooperating with the FBI in an organized crime investigation. There were even tales of Elvis living quietly in Argentina or managing a gas station in rural Michigan. And then came the sightings. Over the years, thousands have reported seeing him on street corners, in diners, at airports. One infamous photo from 1988, taken at Graceland, appeared to show a bearded man in the background who bore a striking resemblance to the king. Another theory zeroed in on the name engraved on his tombstone: Elvis Aaron Presley. Conspiracists pointed out that his middle name had previously been spelled Aaron, suggesting the new spelling was intentional, to signal a decoy burial. But perhaps the most tantalizing clue: the FBI files. Declassified documents show that Elvis had been in contact with the FBI, even voicing concerns about extortion attempts and the mafia. In one case, he allegedly volunteered to help the Bureau fight organized crime, fueling the notion that he was offered a new identity in exchange for testimony. Still, there's no real proof, no verified sightings, no leaked documents, only fragments of coincidence and hope. So why do the theories persist? Because Elvis was more than a man. He was a myth. And myths don't die quietly. For fans, the idea that he might still be out there, living in secret, offered comfort. It made his absence easier to bear. After all, how could someone so larger than life simply vanish into a bathroom floor? The truth is, Elvis's death was sudden. It was shrouded in secrecy. The autopsy was sealed. The press was fed limited information, and the images of his final days, bloated, paranoid, broken, didn't fit the memory millions wanted to keep, so they rewrote the ending. They imagined him alive, watching, waiting, smiling under a new name, humming old tunes to himself while the world debated his fate. In the end, it wasn't about whether Elvis faked his death, it was about whether the world was ready to let him go. Number 1. The FBI files and extortion attempts. Of all the secrets Elvis Presley left behind, none are more chilling or more revealing than the ones locked away in government vaults. For years, fans speculated about Elvis's ties to the FBI. Some imagined covert missions, others believed he was a government informant. But when the Bureau finally released over 680 pages of files after his death, the truth turned out to be more bizarre and more disturbing than anyone could have scripted. Elvis wasn't under investigation. He was the target of schemes, plots, and extortion attempts, and he knew it. Throughout the 1970s, Elvis personally reported several threats to federal authorities. Some were financial, anonymous individuals demanding money in exchange for protecting his image. Others were more sinister, letters laced with threats of violence, even hints of blackmail involving secret recordings and private affairs. One case, documented in the FBI archive, details a threat made by a former associate who claimed to have damning evidence of Elvis's alleged drug abuse and romantic entanglements. The threat was clear: pay up or the world finds out. Elvis, rattled and furious, refused. He handed the case over to federal agents, but the files also reveal something even more haunting: Elvis's growing paranoia. He believed he was being followed, bugged, betrayed. He once reportedly told a friend, "They're watching me. They're listening to me. I can feel it." Whether it was the FBI, the press, or his own fractured circle of trust, Elvis knew the walls were closing in. The pressure drove him deeper into isolation. He retreated to Graceland for weeks at a time, speaking only to a few trusted aides. When he did emerge, he often appeared bloated, glassy-eyed, or erratic, and the letters kept coming. Elvis's attempts to cooperate with law enforcement weren't just protective, they were desperate. In one unconfirmed report, he even offered to go undercover for the FBI to infiltrate what he called un-American elements in entertainment. The Bureau declined, but the very offer speaks volumes. He was scared, disillusioned, and searching for purpose beyond the stage lights. After his death, conspiracy theorists mined the FBI documents for clues. Some claimed the redactions hinted at a larger plot. Others saw the sheer volume of correspondence as proof that Elvis was entangled in something deeper than fame. But what emerges from the pages is not espionage, it's vulnerability. Elvis wasn't just hounded by fame. He was hunted by opportunists, shadowed by betrayal, and exhausted by a world that wanted more of him than he had left to give. He once sang, "I'm caught in a trap. I can't walk out." It wasn't just a lyric, it was prophecy, the man behind the myth. By the time the king was laid to rest in the meditation garden at Graceland, the world was left with two Elvis Presleys. There was the public Elvis, dazzling, mythic, immortal, the white jumpsuits, the stadiums, the voice that transcended race, religion, and reason, the man who changed music forever. And then there was the private Elvis, wounded, vulnerable, and increasingly alone, a man smothered by fame, controlled by handlers, manipulated by a false colonel, drugged into submission, and tormented by the very image he had created. He wasn't just a casualty of celebrity, he was one of its earliest victims. The 10 secrets we've explored are not just juicy bits of gossip, they are clues, fragments of a larger, more tragic mosaic that explain why a man with everything, fame, fortune, and fans, could still feel empty, betrayed, and lost. They show us the price of building a kingdom on stage, and the cost of trying to escape it behind closed doors. Because behind the glitz and glamour, there was a boy from Tupelo who never truly escaped poverty, who never really grieved his mother, who never outran the shadow of a man named Parker, and who, despite being desired by millions, couldn't find peace in a single bed. He left us too soon. But perhaps, with every truth unearthed, with every myth unraveled, we get closer to understanding why. Elvis Presley didn't just leave behind records and rhinestones. He left behind a tangled legacy of brilliance and burden, desire and disillusionment. And now, you know the secrets he tried to hide. The king is gone, but the mystery lives on. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and comment down below as it helps support this channel. Also, consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell to get notified of our newest videos. Thanks for watching.